Hi, Gary. Thank you very much for joining us today. Brixton Metals is an exploration company with 4 projects, but I want to focus on your most advanced project, which is called the Thorn Project. It's a copper-gold-silver project located in northern British Columbia. And Thorn is located along the trend of the Golden Triangle. And before we examine Thorn in more detail, I want to briefly discuss the activity in the Golden Triangle. There's been a lot of investment in recent years by many of the majors, so maybe you can just give us a brief overview of this activity.
Sure. Hey, Jimmy, and glad to be on. There's been a lot of activity in the Golden Triangle in general. As you mentioned, we're on trend. We're a little further north than the main activity there, but yeah, you're seeing a lot of the majors. As most people know, they're getting quite hungry for the next big copper plays, and demand for copper is quite strong. So you're seeing just recently in the news, Glencore taking a run at Teck. That's still, I think, in play, and we'll see how that plays out. Of course, you have an ongoing Newmont Newcrest potential merger. That's a pretty big deal. And what's interesting is even the large gold companies are looking for big copper plays. And there's a saying that some of the largest gold deposits in the world are copper porphyries. So you do get a lot of gold with these copper systems. Recently, Newmont took over GT Gold in the Golden Triangle. So there's certainly lots of eyes on the play. I think there's a lot more excitement to come out of that. It's a big area. It's something like a 500 kilometer long trend. There's lots of activity, and I think we'll see a lot more exciting transactions, and in that M&A front.
And Gary, remind me again, what properties do Teck Resources own, and also Newcrest?
Well, Teck has the Galore Creek, so Teck and Newmont for 50-50 on the Galore Creek, which is a very large copper-gold porphyry system. Teck also has, I think, a 75% interest with the Copper Fox on the Shaft Creek, which is not that far from Galore Creek, as well as other assets in the area. Newcrest recently actually acquired, I did mention that, but they acquired Pretium for the Brucejack high-grade gold mine. And then, of course, Newcrest has, I believe, a 75% interest in the Red Chris mine, which started off as a open pit, and now they're working on a deep block cave, and they're having success in finding new deep style mineralization. I believe Imperial Metals is the 25% owner of that. So lots of activity. There's a lot of companies that have mine development plans. You have Seabridge with the massive KSM, which is one of the largest copper gold systems up there, and then Tudor's not far away. So a lot of players in the area.
Gary, that's a great overview of the Golden Triangle, and I want to move on now and discuss your Thorn project in more detail. You and your team have done extensive drilling on the property. In 2022, 58 holes were drilled, totaling 18,000 meters. Can you provide an overview of the 2022 drilling campaign?
Sure. Yeah, most of that drilling, which was the most extensive drilling the company's ever done and the project's ever seen. So that was pretty exciting. We've really focused on the Camp Creek porphyry discovery. That was really fleshed out, or at least identified in, I would say, 2019. We started to show evidence of porphyry style mineralization at depth. And it wasn't really till 2021 that we started to push these holes deeper into the system and showing evidence of porphyry style mineralization. So that was pretty exciting. We definitely confirmed what we believe is a large system. We've nowhere near tested the limits of that, but we are into a copper dominant porphyry system in Camp Creek. We're calling it the Camp Creek corridor because it does include some of the high solidation veins and breccias that we were drilling prior to 2020 and 2019. But also the other part of the campaign last season, 2022, was focused on the Trapper Gold target. As I mentioned earlier, Brixton didn't own those claims until 2020. The previous operator had drilled about 40 holes in that Trapper group, and some of that historical work was actually done by Chevron as part of the regional work. So we followed up really on the work that was done in 2011. So we did some drilling with some really good results on the Trapper target. I think we got about 52 holes in it in 2022. Some exceptional long intervals, and which we can talk about. So that was the main driver. The other thing that we did, because again we didn't own the Metla claims that we acquired until 2020. In the previous season, there's way too much snow, so we didn't get a chance to get out there and really do some work on it. But last season, 2022, we had a lot of boots on the ground work on the Metla target, and we took a lot of samples. And I'd say if you look back at some of our numbers and our presentation, we've got a lot of really high grade copper gold numbers, surface sampling that we've done. So we're really starting to flush out some of these other areas. I mean, there's still lots of work to do there. But so, what's working here is geochem. Soils and rock seems to work quite well for us. We continue to run geophysical surveys, geochem mapping, essentially trying to work up some of these earlier stage targets to the drill stage, because it is such a large area. We just can't work them all. So we are ranking these targets and kind of working our way through the list, if you will.
And Gary, maybe you can just touch on some of the holes and the grades associated with those holes at both Trapper Gold and also Camp Creek.
Sure. Yeah, the Camp Creek. We're drilling. I think our deepest hole was 1375 meters. So we're still in mineralization. What's interesting about the Camp Creek target, and a lot of the work that was done, early on, was really focused on the surface. We've got these high grade, high sulfidation veins and breccia zones, and we drilled some pretty spectacular results out of that. 2019, we drilled hole 150 that drilled 554 meters of just over 1% copper equivalent. Within that was about 136 meters of over 2% copper equivalent. And then if you take about a kilometer step to the west, where we have a cluster of holes measuring about 600-700 meters. We had, I think our longest interval was 967 meters of about 0.4 copper equivalent, with about 150 meter subinterval of, I'm going to say 0.9% copper equivalent. 184 was one of our better holes. So we actually ended in quite strong mineralization, just shy of 1,200 meters. That hole was 820 meters of almost 0.5 equivalent copper, and with a subinterval there of about 300 meters of, I think 0.9 copper equivalent. So we're starting to approach some economic grades here. We don't believe that, we're in the heart of the system, and that's what we're hoping to test this year on the Camp Creek system is to expand the known limits of mineralization, which we believe we've got a big footprint here, something like 1 kilometer by 2K. So we want to try and bulk out the expansion there, but also try and show, where the higher grade portion of the system is, because most of these porphyry systems have a enriched, let's say necessarily a center system, but maybe it's on the side, but somewhere there's going to be an enriched zone that will be sort of the starter area, and we want to try and see if we can tap that to really, fire this thing up. Now, if you shift over into the Trapper Gold target, which is about 8 kilometers in the sort of a southeast trend from the Camp Creek target, right now it looks more like a gold target. We're calling it the Trapper Gold target, but it is associated with base metal veins, and there are some pretty interesting copper showings peripheral to the main gold mineralization. So we believe that potentially there is a copper porphyry perhaps driving the Trapper system, and it's not too uncommon to have precious metal enrichment higher up in the system, and then as you get deeper, you start to get into the copper part of the system. But some of the drilling we did in 2022 at Trapper, one of our better holes, hole 205, was 64 meters of 5.74 grams of gold, and it was around, I think, 30 meters of 10 gram was a high grade subinterval. We also had hole 243, I believe, that went down almost 400 meters of just under a gram And within that, there was about 114 meters of almost 2.5 grams gold. So there are some quite high-grade subintervals. And what's interesting about that target is the intrusion is a little bit different than the Camp Creek, but similar age. And the contact between the diorite porphyry intrusion unit to the much older Stauhini Lapilli Tube volcanics, that contact seems to be important. And while we get gold mineralization in either lithologies, that contact between the volcanics and the diorite intrusion seems to have the enrichment part of the system. And so it looks like it has a sort of a north plunge to it. And the goal really is to try and expand the strike of that, but also down plunge and try and see if we can understand what maybe the true width of that system is, because we haven't drilled that up either.
Gary, you threw out a lot of grades here, and I want to put all of this into perspective. Newcrest owns the Red Chris mine, which is located in the Golden Triangle. It's a copper gold producer. How would these grades compare to what Red Chris is mining?
Well, Red Chris is mining 0.4 copper, 0.4 gold is their reserve grade. I would say we're not quite there. I'd say we're approaching economic grades here. It's going to take a bit more work, and like I said, we're trying to find that higher grade portion of the system that you can sort of start to build some economics around. I don't think we're quite there yet, but it's certainly demonstrating that we're onto something significant here. It is a new discovery, and it's it's in the making, and that's going to take some time. The challenge with the drilling the deep holes is that they take time. They're 4 or 5 weeks to drill one of those holes. So it's not a quick endeavor there, but it's looking pretty exciting.
Gary, you've stated in the past that the style of mineralization indicates that you might be on the edge of a very large copper porphyry. Can you just expand on this and why you think this deposit can become much larger?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the drilling that we've done so far I'd say almost all the holes, deeper holes, have ended in copper porphyry style mineralization. And I think the footprint right now is about 600-700 meters. So it's still open. There's evidence, like if you look at some of the earlier drilling that we did, you got about 1 kilometer in that sort of northwest, southeast direction. So we're having the surface expressions of mineralization in a sort of 1 kilometer in one direction, and potentially 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers in the, sort of up the Camp Creek direction. We haven't quite tested past the Oban diatreme breccia, which is about 1 kilometer in itself. So lots of drilling to do in and around that, so 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. And then the goal would be to, what happens above that, further out to the east? We don't know because we haven't drilled past that. But part of the challenge is we do have a younger volcanic cover that covers it. So there's no evidence that it's there because it's covered up by younger volcanic. So we're going to have to do some kind of wildcatting out there to see. But the geophysics that we have there actually has an interesting deep conductor. So we do have some evidence for a bigger system through the geophysics, and we're just going to have to drill it to find out.
Gary, I want to move on now and discuss BHP's involvement. In November of 2022, BHP made a $13.6 million investment in Brixton Metals for 19.9% of the company, and the purpose was to focus on the Thorn Project. And there are a lot of copper exploration companies operating in British Columbia. What was it exactly about the Thorn Project that the BHP team liked?
Yeah, well, I think a couple things. We have such a massive land position. One of the comments, that we heard from the BHP group was that, they believe we have a complete mineral system here. And I think what they mean by that is that, we've got an opportunity to find not one, not two, perhaps more porphyry systems. And it's quite well known that these porphyry systems tend to form in clusters. Part of the challenge in the mining business is when there's a new discovery found, a lot of the explorationists get out there and stake claims and acquire ground. So they tend to have sort of fragmented ownership. And the fact that we have been fairly aggressive in building what now is almost 3,000 square kilometers of mineral tenure, I think is quite impressive in that. So lots of opportunity to find the next big copper discovery, I think. And I think that's got to be one of the big reasons.
And Gary, how involved is BHP in picking targets and determining the direction of the drilling campaign for the coming year?
Well, we formed a technical committee. So 2 BHP members, 2 Brixton members on the technical committee. And then, of course, we have lots of team members behind that. So we are really working as a group here to, find the next big discovery for copper. So I think what we're, the way we kind of look at it is like, there's a lot of sub-disciplines within geology and exploration. So we're trying to bring all that together to build confidence, and we are working as a unit to get at it quicker. One of the things that we're excited about working with BHP, they've got a very deep geophysical department, and one of the things that we did last year, we collected a lot of data from the deep holes, the physical properties. And why that's important is because we're going to integrate that into a new revised 3D inversion geophysical model, because we flew this big mobile MT survey. And so that's going to give us some confidence, because we know what the assays are, we know what the physical properties are, put those together into the model, and then what does that look like? And then can that show us maybe where to go? So to try and integrate that into some vectoring into the next leg of drilling, perhaps. So we're looking forward to seeing that. So that's going to be exciting to sort of hang your hat on, especially when you're drilling deep holes. It's kind of drilling blind there. So yeah, it's been really good. BHP's been great to work with.
And so let's talk about your drilling program for the 2023 season. How many meters, how many rigs, and what targets do you have identified?
Yeah, so we're planning about 20,000 meters drilling right now, starting with about 2 drills in Camp Creek, and then we'll ramp up as the winter peels off. We'll probably push it up towards 4 drills towards mid-season, I would say.
Gary, let's move on now and discuss your balance sheet. Cash is the lifeblood of an exploration company, and you have the distinct advantage of being fully funded with $17 million in cash. How will you allocate this cash in the coming year?
Yeah, well, we're focused pretty much 100% on Thorn, and right now we've got a board-approved budget for about 14 million of that 17. So that'll carry us through the end of the year for sure. We're in good shape. We are focused on Thorn, and it's again largely going to go to drilling, but we're going to do some geochem and some additional geophysics.
Gary, as we wrap up, what can investors expect in terms of news flow in the coming months from Brixton Metals?
Yeah, I would say as we get into the summer months, we're trying to get an early start on it. We know we're pushing for mid-May to be the drills turning to the right. So I would anticipate getting results out to market sometime in July, perhaps, because it is still a process to get through those deep holes. And then, from July right through to the end of the year, perhaps trickling into next year, I'm hopeful that the labs, have improved their turnarounds, but we'll have to see on that. So if you look at what happened last year, we got an early jump and we had results turned around quite quickly. But towards the end of the year, it was taking months to get those results out. So, we should have a good amount of news flow coming out this year. So keep an eye on Camp Creek and keep an eye on some holes coming out of Trapper.
Well, Gary, that was a great overview of Brixton Metals, and I want to thank you for spending time with us today, and good luck on your upcoming drilling program.
Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate it.